Welcome to Week 1's lecture. Because we're learning about US-based healthcare information standards and interoperability, there's a wealth of information already prepared by the US government. This content comes from a grant from the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Information Technology. So welcome to Terminology in Healthcare and Public Health Settings, Standards to Promote Health Information Exchange. In this lecture, we will discuss some of the standard clinical vocabularies and terminologies that are needed to exchange health information across providers. Objectives for this lecture: we'll cover standards to promote health information exchange. We'll define some terminology. We'll talk about standardized data sets. We'll be able to identify HIPAA standard data sets and different terminologies and vocabularies at an introductory level, since we will cover these more in depth throughout the course. Before we look at data collection in modern terms, let's take a look at what Florence Nightingale thought about hospital records in the middle of the 19th century. Using only standardized terminologies or data sets means that data collection and reporting is done in a standardized manner. Here are a few important points about health information standards. A data set is a list of the data elements with uniform definitions for each element. Standardized terminologies allow us to merge data so that population health studies can be conducted, decision support can be utilized, and mapping between terminologies for patient-specific information can be achieved. In recent years, we also use these standard terminologies and classification systems to be able to extract data out, de-identify it, and use it for research. Standardized data sets have a data dictionary that contains the metadata, otherwise known as data about data, so that users know what each data element means. According to the National Alliance for Health Information Technology Interoperability, the ability of different information technology systems to communicate, to exchange data accurately, effectively, and consistently, and to use the information that has been exchanged is what is needed. Two key elements of this definition are exchange and use. For example, to exchange data between systems, data must be formatted in a standard manner. A patient's birth date may be stated in multiple ways. Even though we can understand these differences, the information systems do not automatically understand these differences in format. For the systems to be interoperable, each system must understand which numbers represent the month, the date, and the year. What is needed are what we call messaging standards. Standardized terminologies are also called ontologies or healthcare system languages, and these have been designed to describe patient diagnoses, interventions, such as procedures, and outcomes. Standardized terminologies help achieve what is known as semantic interoperability. Semantic refers to meaning. So semantic interoperability assures that the terms mean the same things to different users, and it is this aspect of interoperability that allows the data that are exchanged to be effectively used in clinical care and research. Electronic health records, or EHRs, comply with standards that support communications or exchanges of data. The messaging standards are also called data exchange standards and sometimes called interoperability standards. Adhering to this standard supports accurate sharing of data. The various standards have protocols that define the formats for electronic exchange of data. There are many messaging standards for exchange of information. The appropriate standard depends on the type of data to be exchanged, and there's some listed here. One example, digital imaging and communications in medicine. So if you think about images, that is considered DICOM. DICOM standards can be applied in any healthcare setting using diagnostic images such as radiology, pathology, dentistry, and surgery. The standards address areas such as data structure, data dictionary, message exchange, media storage, mapping, and so on. Health Level 7 or HL7 is a nonprofit standards development organization that is accredited by ANSI. So you may have heard the term ANSI before. If you've already taken the database course where we talk about text files, and this is a standard that's used around the world. Classification systems are designed to group similar or related data. So one use of classification systems is for external reporting for a variety of purposes, including reimbursement. So on this slide, you see an example of ICD-9. We're currently using, we're on ICD-10. In contrast to a classification, a terminology is a set of terms that represent a system of concepts. For example, in a terminology, the term hyperthermia would include concepts of fever and elevated temperature. Vocabularies are lists of words and their meanings, much like a dictionary. It is important to know that while some references define vocabularies as a collection of words with their definitions, others use terminologies and vocabularies as synonyms. And then we have clinical terminologies that are designed to capture the documentation entered by providers when delivering clinical care. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, contains standards related to privacy, security, and electronic transactions, and code sets for health information. And there are some examples here. One example I'll point out, like the National Drug Codes, NDC. If you really start getting into all the different medications, some EHRs actually rely on different types of drug code systems like RxNorm or Multum. And so this can become pretty complicated when you have to map one set of codes or classifications to another. And as you can see here, what I mentioned about ICD-10, this actually was delayed a little bit, and it really took until 2015 to start implementing ICD-10. And we'll see these change as we have more different types of diagnoses as we go through the next few years. National Drug Codes is a standard for reporting retail pharmacy transactions. This is owned by the U.S. FDA, and this is for prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, and drugs used by veterinarians. And then we also have the Healthcare Common Procedure Coding System. It's HCPCS, and we just call it HCPCS. And then we also have terminology codes, procedural terminology codes called CPTs. This usually has codes for things like surgeries and other interventions. There are also codes for dental terminology. We also have SNOMED, and you'll see that a lot as well, or SNOMED CT. And so again, if you start getting into the nitty-gritty, working on projects where you are mapping data to collect data from many different healthcare systems using different EHRs, you will find that many times each health system will use a different set of terminologies. And SNOMED is really a compilation of many of the healthcare terminologies organized together in one terminology structure. It's commonly used in medicine and nursing. And logical observation identifiers, names, and codes, LOINC. This is for all of the laboratory tests, blood tests and other types of tests done in a lab, for example, COVID-19 tests. And CHI is a government initiative. It adopts the standards for electronic exchange of health information. It applies to government healthcare, and it includes LOINC, DICOM, SNOMED, and HIPAA code sets. And these are standards to promote health information exchange. And you will get to use these in a little more detail as we go through the course and talk more about things like FHIR, which is FHIR, HL7, and health information exchanges.